Hey folks, I'm Thomas. I'm excited to talk about our team's work on agrivoltaics in Kern County. Kern, our client was the city of Bakersfield in Kern County in Southern California. Kern is a really interesting part of this country. It is the fifth largest producer of agriculture in the entire country. Its main industries are agriculture and fossil fuels. And despite that, it is already the fourth largest producer of renewable energy in California. The same things that make it so attractive for agriculture, the flat land, the sunshine, make it very attractive to solar. Despite these things, there's some real challenges in this area. This area has been in serious drought for decades. This is really impacting agriculture, water is more expensive, farmland is going fallow because of shortages. So the city of Bakersfield was interested in looking at agrivoltaics, the pairing of farming with solar, as tied to their strategic plan. They're looking at economic resiliency through industry diversification. They're looking at the evolution of their traditional sectors, fossil fuels and farming, and they're interested in sustainability. So they asked us to assess the water, energy, and agricultural impact of agrivoltaics, and to understand the potential benefits and challenges to integrating with their local farming practices. So what are agrivoltaics? You're probably familiar with the first picture, big solar installations. These typically replace farming, or they'll be installed on land that's not suitable for farming. What we were looking at was a newer concept, agrivoltaics, pairing solar panels with active cultivation of crops. These come in two different formats. The most common are these elevated panels. These panels shade the crops. In some cases, this can reduce crop yields. In other cases, there are crops that actually benefit from the shading. The shading also reduces water usage because there's less evapotranspiration. The third picture here is a newer form. These vertical bifacial panels, as you can see, they run down the field between the crops. And this lets heavy machinery work uninterrupted. So this is a really interesting option as well. So these are just two very specific examples, but this is what we were looking at. So we did a ton of research here, and I'm going to go through a lot of this in our slides today. Some of us went out to California, visited some of the farms to speak to them about this, did a survey, did geospatial research, financial modeling, and I'll go through these in more detail. But drawing from all of these, our recommendation to the client was that yes, agrivoltaics would be of benefit to the city and to the county. But there was definitely some areas we identified for further research. So from our financial analysis, it was very clear, like a lot of new technology, it's going to require some financial assistance to get this off the ground. Roughly 20% grant funding towards the upfront cost of building these solar installations. However, Kern County is a really good place to do this. Because of their long history of fossil fuels, most of this county is considered an energy community. Under the Inflation Reduction Act, areas that were negatively impacted by fossil fuels get an extra 10% investment tax credit on top of the 30% that all solar projects get. So that makes Kern County a great place to try this out. Second, it was clear that about 8 foot was the tallest you'd want to go with building these for the financial reasons. Building taller just gets more expensive. Third, it was clear that smaller agrivoltaics projects would be most viable. These behind-the-meter projects would roughly match the energy production with the needs of an individual farm. Anything bigger has to connect directly to the grid, more permitting, more expensive, longer time frames, and the electricity you generate just gets sold for a lower price. We looked at the top 10 crops that have grown in the county. We managed to find 11 different case studies from 5 countries around the world to learn what is the impact on the crops and the water. We evaluated all this on our recommendation of the 8-foot height of panels. And from all of this, it was clear that table grapes were the most suitable crop. And this was really interesting to us because when we went out and spoke to the farmers, the folks who are growing table grapes told us that already these crops were being harmed by getting too much sun. And so the shading would immediately benefit them. Some of these folks were excited just to give this a try. We also saw promise for wine grapes, tomatoes, and alfalfa, but the cultivation methods there were a bit more challenging. And from all of this, it was clear that demonstration projects were necessary. There was very few comparable projects, and so demonstration projects would help us get more concrete numbers on all of these impacts. Taking all of these constraints into consideration, being in an energy community, focusing on table grapes, size of the farms, we were able to identify 60,000 acres of farmland that would be most suitable today for doing this. That's roughly 1/120th of Kern County's agricultural land. And even just this area had the potential to double the amount of existing solar in Kern County. And remember, Kern County is already a quarter of the renewable energy in California, so this is a potentially huge impact. In addition, this would have a lot of benefits for the farmers. For the folks growing the grapes, this would reduce water usage by about a quarter. This water saving is roughly equivalent to the water used by a fifth of households in Kern County today. And it would also provide the farmers with a second income stream. When we spoke to the farmers and when we did our surveys, universally we heard that people were curious about this. Most people didn't have a strongly held opinion. They were open. Would this work for them? What would this cost? As we mapped these across their level of engagement and their power, like how much influence they would have over the policy process, it was clear that farmers and landowners were the key folks to engage with. And we learned from being out there the best way to engage was to visit among the farms. It was to go to the industry events where those folks already were and to identify the key trusted members of the community that could engage with those folks, understand their concerns, and bring them along for the ride. We wanted to go beyond just understanding the finances here. Again, our client was the city of Bakersfield. They need to consider all the stakeholders. So we did a community-centered cost-benefit analysis. We picked the 6 highest impacts, looking at water, shading of the crops, heat-related illness, job security, emissions changes, and soil contamination. We evaluated this across agriculture, the situation today, replacing agriculture with solar, and agrivoltaics. And we did this for a specific project site in Kern County with table grapes, roughly the size we identified as the most suitable. And when we did that, it was clear that agrivoltaics would benefit Kern County. The net present value would be 19% higher. However, when we looked at replacing agriculture with solar, it had even higher benefit, 30% net present value compared to agriculture today. So given that solar has more benefit, why do we still think they should look at agrivoltaics? Again, it's because we're looking at this from the perspective of the city. They need to consider all the stakeholders. When you look at the row for agrivoltaics, everybody wins. If you replace farmland with solar, there's winners and losers. And the biggest losses are for the farmers and for the jobs relating to agriculture. So the city asked us to investigate whether agrivoltaics would help the city and the county long term. Our conclusion was clear that yes, it would benefit the county, and we encouraged them to pursue this further. Our recommendations are that the city should look further into the jobs that could be created through this and understand the value of these jobs to the community. They should look at the skills gaps. What's missing to help this scale up in the county? We recommend that they identify those trusted community leaders who could do the outreach and engagement. And really important, we encourage the city to build demonstration sites. It's going to be really important to get concrete, robust numbers on the impacts on crops, on water, and energy. And these demonstration sites are going to be essential for convincing the farmers and landowners that this really is something that could work in Kern County and work for them. Huge thanks to the whole team that worked on this project and to our advisor, Tom. With that, I'll open up for questions.
First of all, this is awesome and great job. Was wondering, can you go a little bit more into why the solar option was such a higher NPV versus the agrivoltaics? Like, where are you losing value on the agrivoltaic side?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The biggest difference is it costs a lot of money to grow crops. So there's a lot of investments you're having to make in, just the full life cycle of the crops. If you rip out all of that, you don't have to spend any money on any of the farming. You're just earning money from the solar. So that's where the biggest difference is. Also, you're not paying for water. So that's another huge cost saving.
Thank you. No, that was great. My question was more on the crop, right? You mentioned some crops that you thought were suitable, like tomatoes and grapes. Were there any crops that you saw that were not, like absolutely no?
Absolutely. And that was kind of an interesting thing in this. We went into this expecting citrus to be one of the big ones. But as soon as my team went out to California and went to the farms and spoke to the farmers, like the machinery they use for harvesting those is just like so tall, so massive that there was no way that you could have the solar there. And then the trees are too tall, they'd shade the vertical bifacial, so it just wouldn't make sense. So really that was the biggest difference, is like table grapes are harvested by hand. That's why they're the most suitable, the easiest. The stuff that has like the really heavy, big machinery, that's much more challenging.
Question.
Great presentation. Question on, has your team thought about who some potential kind of investors or funders of these projects could be?
Yeah, great question. There's a ton of solar developers in California. That industry is kind of in turmoil right now because of some policy changes around solar. So there's a lot of people looking for like new areas to invest. So from the solar side, there's a lot of interest. From the farmers' side, they're really interested in like how, what does the future of agriculture look like? What's the best way for them to be able to keep farming, keep producing food? So a lot of interest from the farming community as well. But it's a very new technology, particularly new in the United States. And so that's why these kind of demonstration projects are going to be so important. Thank you.